Hi, I'm Ashley Russo. Welcome to the Decision Heroes video series. Today I'm joined by Adam Davies, VP of Fraud Solutions here at FICO. Welcome, Adam.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ashley. How are you doing today?
I'm good. What about you?
Yeah, pretty good. Looking forward to our chat.
Well, Adam is one of our Decision Heroes, an internal expert on fraud protection, and today we'll be talking about how to deal with payment fraud during turbulent times. And we all know this year has been anything but normal. What are some of the trends you're seeing that are now impacting how we deal with fraud?
I think it's been a year of change and a year of continuous change that people have seen. So I think those that have adapted best were those that had planned in advance, done those kind of what ifs, like what if the fraud mix shifts? What if I was struggling with operational capacity? So I think the people that have probably been the most resilient of customers that we've spoken to are the ones that had already embraced automation, that had things like economies of scale in operation with multi-skilled people being able to move. Those that were much more adept at being able to re-simulate things like a risk appetite and determine where they should be declining and blocking in these very turbulent times. I think what we did see is some significant shifts in transactional types and volumes, whether that be in payments or whether that be in cards. And I think now they've started, whether there is a new normal, I'm not sure, but they've started to somewhat normalize. And I think people generally are getting into the mode of this kind of the same new normal of constant change. So I think what we've seen though is an increase in certain types of fraud, right? So we've seen a lot of scams, a lot of social engineering going on. I think we've already started to see an uptick in things like account takeover. And I suspect we're going to see more of that in the coming months, given the sort of amount of credentials and data that may have been compromised in these turbulent times. So those are some of the things that I think we've seen. And the last thing I think we'll touch on here is that COVID has really driven a rapid acceleration in digital transformation. So again, those banks that had already embraced, strong levels of authentication or multiple levels of authentication have probably been able to adapt to those growth in digital channels. And I think we're seeing from talking to customers, there's a lot more need to think about how you manage, a customer identity digitally. How do you manage cross-channel authentication events and things like that?
Well, Adam, those are all really good points. I mean, we've had such a lot to contend with in such a short amount of time. What are the fraud protection strategies financial institutions should be focusing on?
I mean, I touched on it a little bit at the end there. I think one of truly balancing the customer experience and blending and combining together some of the decisions that are made in the authentication environment and decisions that we made in the fraud monitoring environment. So, I think contextual profiling or really, leveraging both parts of what you know about the customer internally with your own data and what you know about the customer externally based on their digital identity, their geolocation, their device. So being able to tie these worlds together and the intelligence of those worlds means that we can apply more sophisticated strategies in how we think about stepping the customer up, especially as we're driving towards digital. But we can also make sure that there's a consistency of experience for the consumer, that regardless of the channel they authenticate through, they get a similar experience. And the experience they have straight afterwards with a transaction they may be making, a payment, a deposit they could be putting into their account, is balanced with the experience that they just had during authentication. So we don't have examples of, stepping up somebody and biometrically authenticating who they are, and then when they go to move money, we decline or hold that transaction. And so I think that's very much what is driving some of the thought process in many of our customers. How do they better orchestrate that intelligence between these two worlds to provide much more customer-centric fraud strategies and treatments, whilst at the same time, making sure that you can still catch those fraudsters?
I think you've outlined a lot for our viewers to think about, but are there any other insights you'd like to share?
Sure. I think the last industry trend I think that we see and we're talking to clients around is one of convergence, and convergence, much like the term enterprise fraud or financial crime, can can really mean different things to different people. So for some people, that might mean the convergence between fraud and compliance, for example, and sharing a similar platform. But for other people, it can really be convergence of broad sets of financial crime disciplines like cybersecurity, like fraud, like compliance, like authentication. I think I just see this as really convergence of many of the connective tissues and decisions we make across those customer journeys where we're trying to control or restrict kind of broadly losses, customer impact, and make sure we're compliant with regulations. So I actually see a lot of converge points. I mentioned a moment ago, the convergence between fraud and authentication, the convergence between things like ID proofing and eKYC, even things like the convergence of decisions we make during the application process and decisions we make about customers once they've been onboarded and are transacting with us. So I think convergence is a key theme moving forwards, whether it's convergence of expertise, whether it's convergence of technology, or whether it's convergence of leveraging similar data assets and consuming them once instead of multiple times over in point solutions. So I think convergence is a key word that's going to drive a lot of the strategy for fraud and financial crime and authentications teams in the coming year.
Well, thanks, Adam. So I think if there's one takeaway for our viewers, convergence is the key word. And for those of you watching, if you want to learn more from our fraud experts, check out the FICO Community Fraud blog.
Take care. Nice chatting with you, Ashley.
Same here. We'll talk soon.
Bye.